here we are, once again, in a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
No, it sounds funny to say, doesn't it? But post-apocalyptic wastelands have actually gotten quite common in comics over the last few years.
Maybe it's a manifestation of mankind's fear that we will inevitably destroy ourselves.
Yeah, either that or it's just so the artist doesn't have to draw so many buildings. But either way, I think they have become a common backdrop for comics, and that is the setting that we have for number 13, a new limited series from Dark Horse.
And wandering through our wasteland is a young amnesiac cyborg who's just looking for his father.
Yes, and again, it seems funny to say it, but it feels like a familiar premise.
It does.
You know, a little bit Johnny Five, a little bit AI, a little bit Pinocchio.
Really?
Maybe.
No, I suppose. And a young innocent with ridiculous powers looking for this little spot in the world.
Yeah, you thought the powers were ridiculous, though.
Okay, ridiculous might be a little too harsh a word.
A little bit.
I did feel like this comic sometimes stepped out of the realms of science fiction and into extreme suspension of disbelief.
You are talking about the metal leg,
I am talking about the metal leg, yeah. At one point, 13 finds a short steel girder and fashions it into a fully articulated prosthesis, which he then attaches to human flesh. It just kind of made me realise that a lot of things in this comic book are not going to be explainable.
Yeah, I know. He throws it together in about 3 seconds.
3 seconds?
Yeah, it is a bit crazy. And it doesn't expect you to, you know, explain that, I suppose. But I'm glad you bring that up, because it does also highlight a scene that I thought was quite important in terms of what's being done here. Because the first person that 13 meets is a young, three-eyed girl named Lorna, who's been captured by an ogre which has eaten her leg.
In front of her.
Yeah, while she's tied to a stake.
Yes.
So clearly writer David Walker is not shying away from the grotesque in this comic.
Not at all. And it's balanced really well with Robert Love's artwork. There's kind of a fun and a bit of a flamboyant, almost bombastic style that he uses, which makes it easier to kind of deal with the grotesqueness that's being put in there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there are some interesting visual choices.
There is.
For example, the scientist who created 13, when we see him, he looks kind of like Doctor Who in the 70s.
He really does.
Yeah, he's got that kind of look.
Yeah.
Incidentally, though, did you feel it was a little early to be introducing that character?
I did, actually. I mean, this is issue 0 of this series, and we start with 13's search and his quest for his father, and it all gets resolved in the first issue. I feel like it should have been...
Well, it's not resolved. We see
who
his
he
father
is.
at least. Yeah.
I feel like it should have been stretched out. I mean, even just to the beginning of issue number 1
that would have been a nice way to
nice.
start issue 1.
That's right, because I felt like I wasn't able to connect with 13. I wasn't able to get a sense of empathy for him throughout.
Yeah, so, I don't know though, right at the start I was really connecting with him. I mean, he finds this skull, picks it up, and he says to it, "Are you my father? Why aren't you talking to me? Are you mad?"
That was quite affecting.
You feel for him in that moment, but then after that, emotionally, all we get from him for the rest of it is either coma patient calm or petulant 5-year-old fury. Just nothing in between.
Nothing in between. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of good ideas and good points in this comic book, but I just feel like some of the plotting decisions were maybe ill-advised.
Yeah, possibly so.
I think it's one of those ones that I'm kind of glad that I read issue number 0, but I probably won't go and look for issue number 1. It is a borrow from me, but it's worth a look for the artwork alone.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the artwork was really good. I think there are a few elements in here that do make for a really nice little story, but between the lack of character development that leads to that empathy problem, which you said, and also the familiarity of some of these premises, it just... I don't know, it wasn't all I wanted it to be. So I'm going to give this one a borrow as well, I think.
It's worth a look.
Yeah.